The night had the kind of rain that turns a city into a whisper. Streetlights wore halos. Sirens smeared into the distance and came back again, stretching time thin. Aaron had just finished a 12-hour shift when the radio crackled with a voice that carried urgency without drama. Multi-vehicle collision, eastbound overpass near exit 17, possible entrapment, fire risk. He could have ignored it. Off shift, already halfway home, the coffee in his cup gone from lukewarm to apology. But habit is a stronger lover than sleep. He tapped the wheel twice, turned the ambulance back toward the lights, and told himself he was only helping until the inbound unit arrived. Before we start, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. City, country, anything you want to share. And if stories like this keep you here, please subscribe so I can bring you more every week. Your support truly helps. He found the wreck by smell before he saw it. Gasoline braided with scorched rubber, the sober breath of burnt plastic. The overpass split rain into silver strings. A sedan had spun sideways and taken the front of a delivery van into its ribs. The van driver, dazed, stood with a cut above his brow, waving at nothing with both hands, as if directing traffic only he could see. A police cruiser blocked the lane. A young officer with wet hair and steady eyes ran toward Aaron and pointed to the sedan. Driver's unresponsive. Airbags deployed, doors jammed. We tried the Halligan, but the angles... "I've got it," Aaron said, already moving. Training turns panic into sequence. He knelt by the shattered window, spoke the words that tell a body it isn't alone. "My name's Aaron. I'm here with you. Can you hear me?" The interior smelled like tin and static. The man's head hung at an angle that warned but did not doom. Pulse at carotid. There, weak but there. Breathing, ragged, shallow, threatened by the airbag like a soft fist. "Need power?" Aaron called without looking. The officer slid the portable unit toward him. Rain tapped the hood like 1,000 polite knuckles. Aaron cut the airbag, sidestepped the waterfall of deflating nylon, then wedged the spreaders into the crease where the door met the frame. Metal groaned like an animal that didn't want to be tamed. "On 3, he said to no one and everyone. 1, 2. The door yielded another inch. He smelled fresh gasoline and something sweeter. Coolant. Grief before it learns a name. "Sir?" He tried again. "You with me?" The man coughed. A streak of blood traced his lip. Eyes fluttered, unfocused, as if scanning a horizon that wasn't there. He managed, then lost the rest in a rattle. "Don't talk yet," Aaron said, his voice low enough to be a place to rest. "You're not going anywhere." Another inch. Another groan. The door gave enough. Aaron killed the ignition. He braced the man's neck, slid the cervical collar into place with the ease of a prayer he'd said too many times, and felt the faint tremor that often comes right before a body decides to try living again. "Good. Stay." "Name?" he asked, because names make anchors. The man blinked. "Mason," he breathed, as if the syllables remembered him better than he remembered them. "Okay, Mason. You're doing great." He checked pupils, sluggish but reactive. Hands, cold, left wrist wrong, right hand trying to make a fist around air. Abdomen tender, seatbelt bruise rising like a continent. He ran oxygen, set lines, let his hands do all the talking. Then he saw it. Not on Mason, not on the console. Outside, half shielded by rain, tucked crooked on the asphalt near the wheel well, like a thing that didn't belong. A silver phone with a lock screen photo still glowing beneath the raindrops. A face. A woman laughing, head thrown back, caught mid-joy. Hair damp from a storm. Eyes he used to be able to recognize at 100 yards. At closing time. At sunrise. The photo wasn't trying to say anything. It spoke anyway. For a second, the noise went away. The rain paused. The streetlights forgot to breathe. Aaron reached for the phone as if it were a fragment of a past life that had broken off and survived the fall. Her. He put the phone back where it had been, face down on the wet shoulder of the road, like a secret that needed to stay wet to stay quiet. "EMS Unit 2 is 3 minutes out," the officer called. "You riding with him?" "I'll stabilize here," Aaron said. He swallowed the name that had clawed its way up his throat. He kept his eyes on the living work. Unit 2 roared in anyway, lights strobing in a way that made everything feel hypothetical. The second medic, Rodriguez, new, capable, slid into position with the speed of a man whose hands had learned how to outrun questions. "Transfer on your count," Aaron said, and they did. As precise as changing a record, without scratching the song. Mason groaned once, then returned to the quiet. They loaded. Rain applauded. The van driver cried the gentle, bewildered tears of a man who will go home and offer a strange thanks to the ceiling. "Family?" the officer asked, flipping his pen out like punctuation. "Find his wallet," Aaron said, too fast. "Likely in the dash or door pocket." The officer returned with a leather billfold and a damp insurance card. "Mason Hale," he read. "Address on Sycamore Lane." He glanced at Aaron's face, read nothing, and moved on. Sycamore Lane. Of course. Of course the world would keep its sense of humor. That cul-de-sac with the maple that tried to be a cathedral every October. The porch swing that had always needed oil. The house he had left when he signed the papers and taught himself the taste of absence. "Ride along," Rodriguez said. "We'll need a second set of hands." Aaron hesitated the way people do right before they admit they've already decided. "I'm off shift." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow that said everything about priorities and nothing about rules. And I'm coming," Aaron said. Inside the rig, life shrank to the dimensions it prefers. Heart rate, blood pressure, the geography of pain mapped in numbers that look like obedience. Sirens elongated the night. Rodriguez worked the monitor. Aaron watched the rhythm from a distance equal to 8 months and 15 days. Mason's eyes opened for a fraction of a second. Enough to catch a person if a person was there. Aaron leaned into the field where words sometimes land and sometimes blow away. "You're not alone," he said, and didn't add the rest. "You've never been, even when you thought you were." At St. Catherine's, they handed Mason to trauma with the sacred efficiency of people who spend their days pushing back a tide and pretending the wall will hold. The trauma team spoke in clipped, beautiful grammar. FAST exam, probable splenic involvement, wrist fracture, watch the SATS, no loss of airway, let's move. Only when Mason disappeared through the double doors did Aaron let his breath go all the way out. He leaned against the hallway wall, let the cheap paint take his weight, and let the roar inside his head become smaller than the hum of the fluorescent light. He would leave now. He would go home. He would erase the lock screen from his mind like a smudge off a window. He would. "Aaron?" The voice arrived with the patience of someone who had practiced not saying it for a long time. He turned before he could choose not to. There she was, as inevitable as rain. Lena. She hadn't changed in the ways that mattered. Hair tied back in a knot that always looked like it was one laugh away from undoing itself. Eyes that confessed before her mouth did. The determined softness of her mouth, built for gentle arguments and the kinds of apologies that could put a house back together. She wore a sweater the color of dry wheat and jeans with one cuff rolled twice, like she still trusted practicalities to keep her from tripping. For a second, they just stood. It was a trick they'd always had, turning silence into a room with windows. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, which was a way of saying I didn't plan on you. "I'm not," he said, which was a way of saying I couldn't not. Her eyes flicked toward the trauma doors. "Was it you?" "It was us," he said, because singulars were overrated, and a lie here would make the air brittle. "We got him out." "He's—" Her voice faltered on the edge of a word that refused to promise. "Is he—" "Alive," Aaron said, "stable enough to fight for more." She closed her eyes, and for a moment the relief looked like pain. When she opened them, there was something else there too. An old, complicated gratitude that knew it was walking across glass. "Thank you," she said, too simple for what she meant. "You didn't have to." He thought of the lock screen, the way the camera had caught her in an unscripted laugh, like truth itself had recorded the moment. "I was headed home," he said. The call came in. I turned around. She nodded, as if the universe had just admitted to a coincidence it was proud of. "He left to get takeout," she said, because small facts keep large ones from tipping over. "I was making tea. I told him not to hurry." Aaron imagined the last ordinary words of a night that would no longer be ordinary. "Don't hurry," he swallowed. "He heard you," he said. "People hear the last thing." They stood with that for a while, the way you hold a fragile thing you're not sure how to put down. A nurse passed with a tray of vials and let her sympathy look sideways long enough to bless and then move on. Somewhere down the hall, a vending machine tried to convince a man that a sugar high could make grief sprint. "How have you been?" Lena asked, and even they knew what the question meant. "How have you survived without me? And also, how dare you ask me to answer that cleanly?" "Working," he said. "Sleeping when the weather lets me." He didn't add that he had started buying secondhand books again and leaving them open around the apartment like markers for a map he was reconstructing. "And you?" he asked, which meant, "Are you happy, and please don't lie in a way that will make me have to hold it against you? Planting things that mostly die, cooking things that mostly don't," she said. A shy, not quite smile. "Learning how to keep the kettle from boiling over. You'd be surprised how many lessons hide inside a kitchen." "I wouldn't," he said. And they both remembered at the same time the way they'd used to argue at the stove. About onions. About heat. About everything that was never about onions or heat. "Why are you here, Aaron?" she asked after a while. And the words weren't cruel. They were tired of not asking. "You could have passed the call off. Why this one?" He considered lying. He considered telling her a story about proximity and civic duty. He considered the clean line of a professional answer. Then he thought about the lock screen again, about the idea of a universe that tosses you the exact thing you've been pretending not to want, just to see whether you'll drop it. "Because it was you," he said finally. Because I heard the street name and hoped I was wrong, and then was angry with myself for hoping, and then turned the wheel anyway. She took that without flinching. It's been a long time, she said. 8 months and 15 days, he heard himself say, and the admission put a blush on his own face like a late sun. But who's counting? Something in her softened at that, the way a door does when you jiggle the knob the right way after years of the wrong key. You can go, Aaron, she said. You did your part. You don't owe me anything. He almost laughed at the arithmetic of that sentence. Oh, as if there were a ledger between them that could be balanced with attendance. I know, he said. I'm just going to sit for a minute. Then I'll go. He sat. She sat 2 chairs away, the space between them filled with the kind of quiet you can only share with someone who once knew the topography of your mornings. They watched the trauma doors open and close, like a practiced breath. A doctor came out 40 minutes later with the half-smile professionals wear when a battle has gone not badly enough to lie about and not well enough to celebrate. He's stable. Spleen injury controlled for now. Wrist fracture reduced. Mild concussion. Some internal bruising. We'll keep him in ICU tonight. He asked for you, she told Lena, and Aaron lifted his head the way a dog does when it hears a word it remembers. Only for a minute, the doctor added gently. Then he needs rest. Lena stood. Her knees wobbled and decided not to make a scene. She glanced at Aaron with a look that held 100 edits of a single sentence. I'll be right back, she said, as if she were leaving him on a couch in a life they no longer lived. As she followed the doctor in, she brushed her hand against her pocket, checking by reflex that something was still there. A key? A worry stone? The ring she no longer wore? Aaron caught the tiny motion and felt a pang as precise as a pin. He waited. He watched the clock do what clocks do when you ask them for favors, ignore you. He thought about the last day in the old house, the way their voices had lowered, as if that would make the words less sharp, the way they had packed books together like 2 librarians dividing a life, the way she had finally said, I need a kind of peace you can't keep buying me with bravery. He had nodded like a man who understood, and then he had gone to work and driven fast and rescued strangers and called that acceptance. When she came back, her face had the shine of salt water and relief. He's sleeping, she said. He squeezed my hand. He doesn't remember the crash, just dinner. A ghost of a laugh. He ordered noodles, the ones he hates. I'm glad he's okay, Aaron said, and the sentence cost him something he paid willingly. She sat again, closer this time without making a ceremony of it. He asked how I got here so fast, she said. I told him the truth. That you were there. That you saved him. Aaron stared at the floor. You didn't have to tell him it was me. He wasn't sure whether he was angry about the truth or afraid of its aftermath. I did, she said. I don't keep secrets anymore. Not the big ones, she swallowed. I owe you the same. He looked up then, and the old electricity stuttered between them. Not dangerous anymore, but still capable of lighting a small room. Lena, he said, and her name changed the temperature of the hallway, the way a match changes a room you didn't realize was cold. I never stopped praying for you, she said, and it wasn't a grand declaration, just a quiet treason against the separation they had signed. Even when we weren't speaking. Even when I changed my last name. Even when I convinced myself I was better at being your memory than your wife." He didn't move. He didn't trust his body to be subtle. "Don't say things you can't afford," he said softly. "I'm not buying anything," she whispered back. "I'm returning what I borrowed. We both know what we lost. I'm only telling you that some things I put down never stayed where I put them." He let the words sit, heavy and gentle, like a sleeping child you carry, because waking them would be cruel. "Go home, Aaron," she said at last. "Sleep, please." He stood. The chair sighed. He nodded. "Call me if anything changes," he said, already hating how quickly he remembered the shorthand of their concern. "I will," she said. "I promise." He walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped and turned back. She was watching him the way people watch the ocean, as if it might come back even when it pulls away. He almost said the sentence that had haunted his mouth since the lock screen on the road. "You never stopped loving me," but he swallowed it. He had learned enough about love to know when a truth deserves more than a hallway. Outside, the rain had thinned to a fine seam. He stood under the awning and let the wind bring him the hospital's recycled breath. He took out his phone, opened a blank note, and wrote 3 words he didn't know where to put yet. "She still does." He didn't send them to anyone. On the drive home, the city rearranged itself into scents. The wipers kept time for a song he forgot to turn on. At the red light on Sycamore Lane, he glanced down. A notification pulsed on his screen. "Unknown number, thank you." No punctuation, no name, just the shape of gratitude trying not to ask for more. He didn't need to guess. He typed back, "You're safe. Rest." He knew it was the right answer because it wasn't the whole one. At home, he peeled off the night like a wet shirt and stood at the sink until the water admitted it was tired. He poured the cold coffee down the drain and listened to it go. He sat on the edge of the bed and let the room learn his weight again. He closed his eyes and saw a lock screen laughing in the rain. He opened them and told the ceiling he was listening. He didn't sleep much, but he slept. He dreamed of a porch swing that didn't squeak anymore, and a kettle that refused to boil over, and a woman in a wheat-colored sweater placing her hand over his on a hospital chair and saying nothing because nothing right then would have been an improvement on silence. In the morning, the city forgot about the crash because that is how cities keep their promises to the living. Aaron brewed coffee that tasted like surrender and strength, dressed, and waited for the day to decide what it wanted from him. When the phone rang, he didn't jump. It was the ICU nurse. Mason was asking for the man who had talked to him in the car, the one who said, "You're not alone." Aaron looked at the clock. He looked at the past. He looked at the door. "I'm on my way," he said, and didn't ask himself whether this was duty or devotion, because both, when honest, often wear the same face. Morning came gray and uncertain, the kind of sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain again or let the light through. Aaron sat in his truck outside the hospital for a long time before going in. The coffee on the passenger seat had gone cold again, untouched. He wasn't sure what he was walking toward, a patient who happened to be his ex-wife's husband, or a ghost that still answered to her name. Inside, St. Catherine's smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. The kind of place that was too bright for grief and too quiet for hope. Nurses passed by in a rhythm that felt rehearsed. They didn't look at him because men who hesitate outside ICU doors always look the same, somewhere between brave and lost. "Mr. Hale is awake," the nurse said, glancing at the clipboard. "He's been asking for the paramedic who talked to him at the scene." Aaron nodded once. That was me. She smiled kindly. He said your voice kept him from blacking out. You can go in for a few minutes. Don't tire him out. He followed her to the glass-walled room. Machines blinked in steady green beats. Mason looked smaller than the man Aaron had pulled from the wreck. Cleaner, patched, wrapped in the sterile kindness of hospital linen. A bandage curved under his jaw. His wrist was casted white against the gray sheet. He looked up when Aaron entered, a slow recognition building through the haze of painkillers. You, he said, voice rasping. Aaron managed a half smile. Guess you're stuck with me twice. Mason tried to laugh and winced. They told me, you're off duty. You didn't have to come. Aaron shrugged. Didn't feel finished. Neither did I, Mason said, then grimaced at his own joke. After a moment he added, You saved my life. Aaron looked at the monitors instead of the man. Just doing my job. That's what heroes say when they don't want to talk about it. Aaron shook his head. Heroes don't go home and wonder if they made it worse. Mason studied him. She told me about you. The words landed like a pulse under his ribs. Aaron kept his voice neutral. Yeah? She said you were the one who taught her how to drive in the rain. He remembered that day. A younger Lena gripping the wheel, cursing, laughing, trying to keep the car steady while puddles flared gold under streetlights. He remembered telling her to relax, to let the tires find their way. She was a fast learner, he said quietly. Mason smiled faintly. She said you're the calmest man she ever met. Said that's why she married you. Aaron felt the air shift. And then she didn't anymore. Mason nodded, eyes closing briefly. Life's messy. I know what it's like to love someone who already belonged to someone else before you even met them. Aaron didn't answer. There was nothing useful to say. The monitors kept time for both of them. After a while, Mason spoke again, softer this time. She told me once she still keeps the old swing on the porch because you built it with your hands. She never sits on it, but she won't take it down either. Aaron exhaled through his nose. That sounds like her. You still love her, don't you? Mason's tone wasn't accusation. It was simple curiosity, like a man tracing a map. Aaron leaned back in the chair. Some people you stop loving. Some people you just stop waiting for. I'm still figuring out which one she is. Mason nodded slowly. If it helps, she never stopped waiting for you. Not really. The nurse reappeared, checking vitals, smiling the polite smile that ends conversations. He needs rest, she said gently. Aaron stood. I'll let you sleep, Mason. You're safe now. Mason reached for his wrist, weak but insistent. Tell her I said thank you for still believing in good men. Aaron hesitated, then squeezed his hand once before leaving. In the hallway, he stopped by the window. Rain had started again, thin lines crossing the glass like handwriting he couldn't read. Behind him, footsteps approached. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. Doctor said he'll make it, Lena said. Her voice carried that careful balance of relief and guilt. I just saw him, Aaron said. He's stubborn. He'll be fine. She nodded, then stepped closer. He told me you came back. Didn't plan on it. But you did, she said. He looked at her reflection in the glass. Habit. They stood there, two reflections side by side, close enough for history, too far for comfort. She took a breath. He knows about us. Aaron turned. Knows what? That we don't hate each other. She smiled sadly. He said I looked at you like I was remembering something worth keeping. Was he wrong? No, she said simply. The air between them thickened. Memories rose like fog. Late nights in the kitchen. The smell of her hair after rain. The way she used to fall asleep mid-sentence. All the quiet things that had built a marriage and then failed to save it. I thought I'd stopped missing you, she said, eyes glistening, until I saw you standing in that hallway last night, and it felt like my heart remembered before my head did. He wanted to say her name but didn't trust what would follow. Instead, he said, I'm glad he's alive. You deserve that. You saved him, she said, and I don't know how to thank you without it sounding like another apology. Then don't thank me, he said. Just take care of him. I will, she whispered. They looked at each other a moment longer, long enough to know that the words unsaid were the only honest ones left. Then she stepped back. I should go home, get some sleep. Yeah, he said. You both need it. She turned to leave, then stopped. Aaron? Yeah? Why did you really turn back last night? He hesitated, then answered quietly, because I still know your address. She didn't reply. She only nodded once, eyes wet, and walked away. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. The hospital lights had followed him home, buzzing faintly in his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mason's face, bruised but calm, and Lena's reflection beside his own. He told himself it was closure. He told himself he'd done the right thing, but his heart didn't believe him. At 2:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. A message. From unknown. He's asking for you again. Said he wants to see the man who saved him. He stared at the screen. His first instinct was to ignore it. But something in the message, maybe the absence of a name, maybe the echo of gratitude, made him grab his keys instead. On the drive back, the city was asleep. The roads glistened like old photographs. When he parked, the hospital was half dark, half awake, like a creature that never really rested. Mason was sitting up when he entered the room, pale but conscious. Didn't expect you this soon, Aaron said. Didn't expect to be alive this long, Mason replied, smiling faintly. Sit, please. Aaron did. The heart monitor ticked in even rhythm. I remembered something, Mason said. The moment before I blacked out, I thought about her. And then I heard your voice telling me I wasn't alone. I think part of me knew. Knew what? That it was you. Aaron froze. She talks about you sometimes, you know, Mason continued. Not the details. Just the way she says your name, like it's still home. Aaron looked down. That's a hard thing to hear from the man lying in her bed. Mason smiled sadly. Maybe. But it's not a bad thing to know that someone loves that deeply, even if it's not yours anymore. They sat in silence, two men tied to the same woman by different versions of love. Mason broke it first. If I don't make it. Don't say that, Aaron interrupted. I have to, Mason insisted. If I don't, promise me you'll look after her. She won't ask anyone for help. You know that. Aaron felt the old ache rise in his chest. You'll make it. Promise me, Mason whispered. Aaron hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Mason smiled, eyes closing. Good. Then I can rest. The monitor beeped steadily. Aaron sat there long after the nurse told him visiting hours were over. He didn't move until dawn broke through the blinds. Outside, the world was beginning again, but something inside him had started ending all over again. The morning came quietly, the kind of quiet that felt like a warning. Hospitals always had two kinds of silence: the peaceful kind that came with recovery, and the heavy one that came before the world decided to change again. Aaron had learned to recognize both. Today, the air inside St. Catherine's carried the second kind. He was halfway through his shift at the station when the call came in. Dispatch. ICU show, cardiac event. Requesting any available paramedic on site for immediate assist. Address, St. Catherine's. Room number 312. He didn't need to look it up. He already knew. By the time he ran through the sliding glass doors, the corridor outside Mason's room was chaos wrapped in control. A crash cart stood half open, wires spilling like veins. Nurses moved with the urgency of people who had already accepted the odds, but refused to surrender to them yet. Through the window, Aaron could see the monitors, wild, erratic, fading. "Sir, you can't," a nurse started, but he was already inside. Mason lay there, pale and shaking, eyes fluttering in half-conscious panic. Lena stood at his side, gripping his hand, whispering something Aaron couldn't hear. Her face was streaked with tears and disbelief, like she was trying to negotiate with God using only breath. Aaron moved instinctively. What happened? Sudden arrhythmia, the attending physician said, pressing pads into place. We're losing the rhythm. Charge to 200, someone called. The air filled with static, with desperation disguised as electricity. Aaron stepped closer, not as a medic this time, but as a man who had promised something he hadn't known would come due this soon. Lena looked up at him, eyes wide, lost. Do something, she whispered. Please, Aaron. You saved him once. Please, not like this. He wanted to tell her he wasn't a miracle, that sometimes people leave no matter how hard you hold them. But words are useless when someone is begging time to turn back. The defibrillator screamed. Mason's body jerked once. The monitor flatlined. Again, the doctor shouted. Another jolt. Another second of eternity. Then, a weak blip. Another, and another. A fragile rhythm began to crawl across the screen. Everyone exhaled at once. He's back, the doctor said. Let's stabilize. Aaron backed away, his legs suddenly weak. The crash cart rolled out. The chaos thinned into murmurs. Someone closed the blinds halfway. The world remembered how to breathe. Lena sank into the chair beside the bed, her forehead pressed to Mason's hand. You're okay, she whispered, over and over. You're okay. Aaron stood by the door, watching the set. Her hand trembled, how she clung to the man she loved, or maybe the man she was terrified of losing again. He turned to leave, but Mason's voice stopped him, faint, fragile, but clear. Wait, Aaron turned. Mason's eyes were open now, barely. Don't go. Aaron stepped closer, but the nurse gestured for distance. Mason waved her off. Please, just a minute. The nurse hesitated, then nodded and left them alone. Lena wiped her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. You need to rest. Mason smiled weakly. If I rest too long, you'll both leave again. Aaron froze. Both? Mason turned his gaze toward him. You think I don't see it? His voice was soft, but the truth inside it was sharp. The way she looks at you. The way you look at her. It's not history. It's gravity. Lena's breath caught. Mason. He raised a trembling hand. Don't lie to me. Not now. Aaron tried to speak, but Mason kept going. When I woke up last night, she was whispering your name. I pretended to be asleep because I wanted to believe it was a dream. Lena's lips parted, but no sound came. Mason turned his head toward Aaron again. You still love her? Aaron didn't deny it. There was no point. He nodded once, barely. Mason closed his eyes. Good, he said, almost smiling. At least someone will still love her when I'm gone. Mason, stop, Lena pleaded, but he didn't. Promise me, he said, his voice shaking. Promise me that if this doesn't hold, if my heart gives up, you'll take care of her. You'll make sure she doesn't fall apart pretending to be strong. Aaron's throat tightened. He shook his head. You're going to be fine. Promise me, Mason whispered again. Don't let her be alone. Lena sobbed quietly, clutching his arm. You're not dying. Don't say that. But Aaron knew that tone. The soft, distant calm that comes when a body has already begun to make peace with itself. He had heard it before, too many times, in too many rooms that smelled like endings. He leaned forward, resting his hand on Mason's shoulder. I promise, he said. I'll take care of her. You have my word. Mason smiled, faint, but real. Thank you. Then his hand slipped from Lena's. His eyelids fluttered, and the monitor began its slow climb back into silence. Mason? Lena whispered, shaking him gently. Mason! The steady tone returned, one long, unwavering note, a sound that means time has stopped keeping score. No, she screamed. Not again! The crash team rushed in, but Aaron already knew. He took a step back as they began the ritual of disbelief, the counting, the shocks, the pleading commands. He watched the seconds stretch and fold, and then the doctor said what no one ever wants to say. Time of death, 7:14 a.m. Lena's knees buckled. Aaron caught her before she hit the floor. She buried her face in his chest, shaking. He can't be gone. He promised me dinner. He dash. Aaron held her tighter. I know, he said quietly. I know. The room emptied slowly. The doctor closed Mason's eyes. Someone drew the curtain. The world was polite enough to step outside while their grief unfolded. Hours later, Lena sat in the hospital chapel, staring at the small wooden cross above the candles. The air smelled like wax and flowers. Aaron sat beside her, silent. I prayed for him every day, she said, voice hoarse. Even when we fought. Even when we were tired. I never stopped. I know, Aaron said. She turned toward him, her eyes hollow. He made you promise, didn't he? Aaron hesitated, then nodded. Her lip trembled. He knew. Yeah, Aaron whispered. He knew. She wiped her face, her hands shaking. Do you believe in signs, Aaron? He looked at her. Sometimes. When I met Mason, she said, I thought he was sent to teach me how to love again. But maybe he was sent to teach me how to say goodbye. Aaron didn't answer. He just reached out, his fingers brushing hers. Not to claim, not to comfort, but to remind her she wasn't alone in the wreckage. They sat like that for a long time. Two people who had lost the same man in different ways, bound now by a promise neither of them had asked for, but both understood. Outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds broke open just enough for sunlight to fall through the stained glass, scattering color across her face. Lena looked up. "He used to say that light looks different after storms," she whispered. Aaron smiled faintly. He was right. She stood, slow and unsteady, then looked at him. "Come with me." "Where?" "To tell him goodbye." He followed her down the long hallway toward the room that no longer needed machines. The door was open, curtains drawn. Mason looked peaceful, almost proud, as if he had left the world knowing something they didn't yet understand. Lena touched his hand one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me even now." Aaron watched her, feeling the weight of his promise settle deeper into his chest. When they left the room, she didn't let go of his hand. And he didn't make her. That night, Aaron sat alone in his apartment. The city outside hummed like a distant heartbeat. On the table lay Mason's wedding ring. The nurse had given it to him, mistaking him for family. He turned it in his fingers, the metal warm from his palm. A promise, he thought, isn't just words. It's a burden with a pulse. He looked at the ring one last time, then placed it beside the photo of Lena he'd kept all these months, the one he had tried and failed to throw away. "Rest easy, Mason," he murmured. "I'll keep my word." Outside, thunder rolled far away, like applause for a man who had done the hardest thing a person can do: keep loving where love had already died. The weeks after the funeral moved like fog, slow, shapeless, and unwilling to clear. Every morning, Lena woke up expecting to hear Mason humming in the kitchen, only to remember that silence had replaced him. Every night, Aaron lay awake replaying the last promise he had made to a dying man, a promise that had started to feel less like honor and more like punishment. They saw each other often, though neither of them planned it that way. He would bring groceries when she forgot to shop. She would call when the house felt too big, her voice trembling like the first crack in a frozen lake. They didn't talk about the promise. They didn't talk about love. They just existed, two broken clocks that somehow still kept the same time. The first time he went inside her house again, it almost felt wrong. Everything looked exactly as it had the day he'd moved out. The same blue couch, the same crooked picture frame, the same coffee mug with a chip on the handle. Grief has a way of freezing things. "Thank you for coming," she said, pulling her sweater tighter around her. "It's been hard." Aaron nodded. "I know." "You shouldn't have to do this," she added softly. "You already did enough." "I made a promise," he said. "It wasn't just to him." She looked at him for a long time, eyes tired, fragile, beautiful. "You always kept your promises," she whispered, "even the ones that broke you." He didn't answer. He couldn't. They fell into a rhythm, not love, not friendship, something in between. He fixed the squeaky porch door. She started cooking again. Sometimes they sat on the swing together, the same one he had built a lifetime ago, moving gently with the evening wind. One night, as the sun bled into the horizon, she spoke without looking at him. "He used to ask about you, you know. He wondered if you were happy." Aaron gave a faint smile. "What did you tell him?" I told him you were still trying to be. They sat in silence after that, letting the creak of the swing fill the space where the truth might have lived. A month later, Lena finally agreed to go through Mason's things. Aaron helped, sorting the clothes, the papers, the quiet traces of a life packed into boxes. When she opened the drawer by his desk, she froze. Inside was a sealed envelope, her name written in Mason's careful handwriting. She stared at it, trembling. "I can't read it alone." "Then you won't," Aaron said gently. They sat together on the floor, the letter between them like something sacred. She opened it, unfolding the paper with hands that had forgotten how to be steady. Her voice broke as she read aloud. "Lena, if you're reading this, it means I didn't win this time. I'm sorry. I wish I had more years, more mornings, more ways to love you the way you deserve. But I need you to do something for me. Live. Don't spend the rest of your days turning my name into a wall around your heart. Let someone in, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. I know who will be there when the world feels too quiet. Don't run from him. He was there long before I was, and he'll still be there after I'm gone. Tell him I forgive him for everything he never did wrong." Lena stopped reading. The paper shook in her hands. Tears hit the ink, blurring the final line. Aaron reached out, steadying her fingers. He knew. She nodded slowly. He always did. Neither spoke for a long time. Then, softly, she said, "I don't know how to live without feeling guilty for it." "You don't stop loving someone by living," Aaron said. "You honor them by not forgetting how to." She looked up, her eyes glimmering with something that wasn't quite sorrow anymore. "You always know what to say." "I just learned what silence taught me," he said. As weeks turned into months, their grief began to change shape. They stopped talking about what had happened and started talking about small things: the weather, the garden, a movie on TV. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. But it was breathing again. One evening, Lena made dinner and insisted Aaron stay. They laughed for the first time in months. Real laughter, the kind that felt wrong and right all at once. When he stood to leave, she followed him to the door. The porch light flickered, casting their shadows close together. "Stay for a bit," she said softly. He hesitated. "Lena, I'm not asking for anything," she said. "Just don't go yet." So he stayed. They sat on the porch swing again, just like before, watching the rain start to fall. For a while, neither spoke. Then she leaned her head on his shoulder. "I miss him," she whispered. "I know. I think part of me always will." "That's how you know it was real." They stayed like that until the rain softened to mist. When he finally stood, she caught his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me fall apart." He gave a small, tired smile. "That's not what I did." She frowned. "Then what did you do?" "I just sat beside you until you remembered how to hold yourself together." Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't fall. She nodded. "You always were better at saving people than saving yourself." He turned to go, but she stopped him again. "Aaron, do you ever wonder if love can start again, even after everything?" He met her gaze. "Every day." "Does it scare you?" "Only when it feels possible." Their eyes met and held, long enough for both of them to remember how it used to feel, but too long to pretend it meant nothing. She whispered, "Good night," her voice trembling with a question she didn't ask. He hesitated, then said softly, "Not yet." Then he leaned forward, pressed a quiet kiss to her forehead, and left. That night, as Aaron drove home through the sleeping city, he realized Mason's letter hadn't freed them. It had bound them in a new way. He could feel Lena's grief and his own tangled together, much like two rivers trying to find the same sea. He didn't know where it was heading, only that it was real. And real things, he knew, never came easy. He whispered to the empty car, "I'm keeping the promise, Mason. But I think it's starting to cost me my heart." Outside, thunder rolled again, faint and far away. Somewhere beyond the clouds, maybe Mason smiled. Spring came late that year, as if the world itself had been holding its breath. The trees along Sycamore Lane bloomed unevenly, green mixed with gray, life trying to remember how to return. Aaron stood at the end of the street, coffee in hand, watching the small white petals drift through the air. Everything looked the same: the porch swing, the cracked mailbox, the light in her kitchen window. Yet nothing was. Grief changes the color of familiar things. He hadn't been to her house in weeks, not since that night on the porch, when she leaned against him and whispered that she missed her husband, and when he realized he'd begun to fall in love with her all over again. He'd promised Mason he would take care of her, but he hadn't promised how. Today, though, he couldn't stay away. A message from her had arrived the night before. "Come by tomorrow. There's something I need to tell you." No explanation, no emotion, just that. Now, standing in her driveway, he hesitated before knocking. The door opened before he could. Lena stood there, barefoot, her hair loose, her eyes soft but sure. The months had changed her, less fragile, less afraid. The sadness was still there, but it had learned how to coexist with her smile. "You came," she said. "You asked. Come in, please." The house smelled like coffee and lilies. On the table sat a small wooden box Aaron didn't recognize. She gestured to it as they sat. "Mason's things. The hospital gave it to me after everything. I couldn't open it until now." He waited. Inside the box were a few items: his wedding ring, a folded piece of paper, and a small silver key. She picked up the note and unfolded it. Her hands trembled as she read silently, then passed it to Aaron. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone. Inside this box is the key to the life I never got to live. But maybe you can. I've seen the way he looks at you, Lena. I've seen the way you pretend not to notice. Don't waste what's left of your life punishing yourself for what's already forgiven. The key is for the cabin by the lake. Take him there. Tell him I said it's okay to start over." Aaron stared at the page. His heart beat unevenly. He knew even this. Lena nodded. He always did. The key lay between them, small but impossibly heavy. "I don't know if I can do that," she whispered. "It feels wrong." "Because of him? Because of us?" Aaron looked at her, his voice low. "He didn't write that letter to set us free from guilt, Lena. He wrote it to remind us that love doesn't die. It changes shape." Her eyes filled with tears. "How do you love someone new when part of you still belongs to someone else?" He reached across the table, his hand finding hers. "You don't replace love. You carry it." You let it live beside what comes next. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then she turned her hand, lacing her fingers through his. It wasn't a declaration. It was acceptance. They drove to the cabin that afternoon. The lake was quiet, rippling under soft gray clouds. Mason had bought the place years ago. Aaron remembered helping him fix the roof one summer, both of them laughing about how small the world could be. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and dust. A photograph sat on the mantel. Mason and Lena, smiling, younger, holding hands in that same spot. Lena set the photo down gently. He loved this place. Aaron nodded. He wanted it to be your peace. They sat by the window, watching the rain begin again, soft and forgiving. He would have liked this, she said. He would, Aaron agreed. After a while, she spoke again, barely above a whisper. Do you still feel guilty? Every day. So do I, she said. But I also feel grateful. Isn't that strange? No, Aaron said. It means you're alive. She smiled faintly. You always make it sound simple. It's not, he said. But I think he'd want it to be. That night, the storm deepened. They lit a fire, sat on the old couch, and let the silence speak. At one point, Lena leaned her head against his shoulder, not out of sadness this time, but out of something calmer. I keep dreaming about him, she said. But lately, he's not sick anymore. He's standing by the lake, smiling at me. And every time I wake up, I realize he's farther away. Aaron looked into the fire. Maybe that's what letting go feels like. Maybe. She turned toward him then, eyes bright in the flicker of the flames. And what about us? He took a slow breath. I don't know what we're supposed to be. I just know that when I'm near you, it feels like I finally stopped running. She blinked back tears. He told me once that you were the kind of man who'd always put others first. That's why I fell in love with you, and that's why I let you go, because I thought you deserved peace. You were my peace, Aaron said quietly, her breath caught. And what are we now? He looked at her for a long time before answering. Two people who loved the same man, he said. And somehow, that's what brought us back here. She smiled through her tears. He'd probably make a joke about it. He'd say, "Took you long enough." They both laughed. The kind of laughter that breaks something open and heals it at the same time. Then the laughter faded, leaving only the soft rhythm of rain on the roof. Aaron reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek. She didn't pull away. Her hand rose to meet his. The kiss, when it came, was quiet, hesitant at first, then certain. Not an erasure of what had been, but a continuation of everything that still remained. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "What now?" He smiled faintly. "Now we keep the promise, together." The next morning, the lake was glassy and bright, the kind of morning that looks like forgiveness. Lena stood at the water's edge, holding Mason's ring. "He'd want to stay here," she said softly. Aaron nodded. She threw the ring into the lake. It hit the surface once, twice, then vanished into ripples that spread wider and wider until they disappeared. Lena turned to Aaron and took his hand. "Do you think love can exist in two places at once?" He smiled. "I think it already does." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, the sky clearing above them. Behind them, the water shimmered under the morning sun. as if, just for a moment, it had caught the reflection of someone smiling. "Before you go, tell me what you think." Was Mason right to give them permission to love again? Was this forgiveness or fate? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps me bring more stories like this. Stories about love, loss, and the beautiful, painful ways they find their way back to each other.